How important and significant a discovery is this?
Well, it's very rare to find any of these tombs of the kings of Egypt, and it's been known for a long time, obviously, that this tomb still remained to be discovered.
For 3,500 years, one of Egypt's most mysterious pharaohs has been lying to us. Not a small lie, not an innocent mistake, a deliberate, calculated deception buried beneath centuries of stone, sand, and silence. And we only discovered it because a British-Egyptian team pointed ground-penetrating radar and quantum resonance imaging at a newly unearthed tomb near Luxor and saw something that should not exist. A chamber, empty, a mummy missing, and a name erased, hidden beneath the walls. A name that doesn't belong to the pharaoh this tomb was built for. It belongs to a queen who rewrote history and then made sure no one could prove it. Here's the deal. What I'm about to tell you hasn't made it into the official record yet. The findings are still being verified, debated behind closed doors, fought over by people whose entire careers depend on the old story being true. But the data is out there now, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The tomb everyone is celebrating, the find of the century, was never what it appeared to be. The evidence was always there, we just didn't have the technology to see it until now. March 2025. A British-Egyptian archaeological team working the sun-baked cliffs near Luxor, just west of the Nile, breaks through a false wall that has been sealed for 3.5 millennia. The lead archaeologist holds up his torch. His hands are shaking. When asked by journalists what he sees, he exhales one word: extraordinary. Think about what they expected to find. The tomb of Thutmose II, one of the most elusive pharaohs in all of Egyptian history. Husband of the legendary Hatshepsut, father of the great conqueror Thutmose III, a man so thoroughly erased from the historical record that scholars weren't even sure what he looked like. His reign was short, strange, and shadowy. His money, found in a royal cache in 1881, was in terrible condition, ravaged by ancient disease, covered in lesions that suggested a violent or suspicious death. And his tomb? Never found. Until now. The chamber stretched back 40 feet into the limestone cliff. The walls were painted in vivid blues and golds, the gods of the underworld, the weighing of the heart, the journey into eternity. Stone canopic jars lined the far wall. Amulets of lapis lazuli and carnelian scattered the floor. It was breathtaking. It was historic, and it was completely shockingly empty. No coffin, no mummy, no burial mask. The innermost chamber, where the king should have rested for eternity, had nothing in it but a strange, dark residue on the stone floor and a faint smell the excavation team couldn't identify. Almost immediately, experts started noticing things that didn't add up. And the crazy part, the clues were never hidden. They were staring everyone in the face the entire time. We just refused to see them, because if the clues were real, it meant everything we believed about Thutmose II's death was wrong. Here's what doesn't make sense. Thutmose II died suddenly. Scholars estimate his reign lasted somewhere between 3 and 13 years. Historians can't even agree on that. And the physical evidence on his mummy suggests his death was neither peaceful nor expected. Egyptian religious law was absolute. A pharaoh had to be mummified and sealed in his tomb in exactly 70 days. Now think about what that means. 70 days to carve a royal tomb from solid limestone in the cliffs of the Valley of the Kings. 70 days to prepare the ritual grave goods, the canopic jars, the amulets, the coffins. 70 days to complete a painted burial chamber with scenes from the end to what? For a death, if it was a natural death, that nobody saw coming. But it's not that simple. The tomb itself screams rushed construction. It is embarrassingly small for a pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, less than half the size of comparable royal tombs. The corridor leading to the burial chamber bends at an odd, almost panicked angle, as if the workers hit a fissure in the rock and had to change direction mid-dig. Several of the painted scenes are unfinished, the outlines drawn but never filled in, as if the artists put down their brushes and simply walked away. Then, the archaeologists looked at the artifacts. Really looked. Some of the amulets were engraved with symbols associated with female royalty. 2 of the canopic jar lids bore faces that Egyptologists noted looked strikingly unlike the known artistic depictions of Thutmose II. and carved into the stone above the false wall they had broken through, almost invisible, positioned where no one was supposed to look, were chisel marks. Deep, deliberate chisel marks. Someone had carved something into that wall, and someone else had gone back and systematically gouged it out. A terrifying theory began to form. What if Thutmose II didn't simply die? What if someone made sure he did? And what if that same someone then moved his body, sealed his tomb, and spent the next 20 years making sure no one ever asked questions? That someone had a name, and it was the most powerful woman in Egyptian history. Her name was Hatshepsut. You've seen her face, if you've seen it at all, in the broken statues that litter the halls of the Metropolitan Museum and the Cairo Museum. Statues that were deliberately smashed, faces that were deliberately chiseled off. A woman so thoroughly erased from the historical record that for centuries, Egyptologists didn't even know she existed. Hatshepsut was Thutmose II's wife, his great royal wife. When he died, shortly, suspiciously, she became regent for his young son, the infant Thutmose III. And then she did something unprecedented. She seized the throne herself, declared herself pharaoh, donned the double crown, strapped on a ceremonial false beard, and ruled Egypt for over 20 years as one of its most successful rulers in history. Then she vanished. Her monuments were defaced. Her statues were buried in pits. Her name was hacked from every wall, every obelisk, every inscription. Her stepson, or perhaps it was his advisors, tried to erase her from history entirely. Some scholars even wondered if she had been erased first, before she could erase others. Here's what made researchers nervous. If Hatshepsut had poisoned Thutmose II, or faked his death, accelerated his decline, ensured he would not recover, she would have needed to control what happened to his burial, control the tomb, control the narrative, move the body somewhere only she knew about, seal the official tomb empty, and make sure no one looked too hard. The math worked out perfectly. The empty chamber made sense. The rushed construction made sense. The erased inscriptions made sense. But proving it was impossible. You'd have to damage the tomb walls to see what was beneath them. And nobody was going to let that happen. For months, the Hatshepsut conspiracy theory remained exactly that. Whispered about at conferences, dismissed by the establishment, impossible to prove. Then, during the excavation, something broke, and that accident would expose everything. The story made international headlines. During what should have been a routine cleaning of the tomb's antechamber, an excavation assistant was carefully brushing loose debris from the lower register of the west wall, a section depicting Thutmose II's journey into the underworld. When the scaffolding shifted, a metal bracket swung and struck the painted limestone surface. A section of plaster roughly the size of a dinner plate cracked and fell away. What happened next was almost worse in the accident itself. Beneath the fallen plaster was not bare limestone. It was another layer of plaster, and on that inner layer, barely visible under the dust, were hieroglyphs, older hieroglyphs, a different hand, a different reign. The excavation team froze. The senior Egyptologist on site, Dr. Layla Mansour of Cairo University, was called in immediately. She crouched before the exposed section for a long time without speaking. Then she said, quietly, that what she was looking at appeared to be an original inscription, sealed beneath a second layer of plaster that had been applied after the tomb was first decorated. Someone had come back into this tomb after it was completed and plastered over the original walls, then repainted them with different text, different names. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities was notified. The site was sealed. An international team was brought in, led by British archaeologist Dr. James Whitmore, whose work on 18th Dynasty burial sites had already rewritten certain chapters of the historical record. His first step was to deploy the team's ground-penetrating radar. His logic was straightforward. If the visible plaster layer was a cover-up, the radar might detect the original layer's texture beneath, variations in density, pockets of air, the ghost impression of erased carvings. The results seemed definitive. The radar showed uniform plaster throughout, no meaningful variation, no hidden cavities, no secondary inscriptions beneath the surface. Case closed. The exposed patch was an anomaly. The rest of the tomb was untouched. The team began processing the artifacts. The history books stayed the same. But a small group of scientists didn't buy it. They argued that ground-penetrating radar had critical blind spot. It could detect density, it could find air gaps and cavities, but it couldn't read chemistry. It couldn't distinguish between plaster mixed in 1479 BC and plaster mixed 20 years later. It couldn't detect the molecular memory of limestone that had been carved, smoothed over, and recarved. To see that, you'd need a completely different kind of technology. Something that could read the atomic history of stone itself. And by 2026, that technology existed. Dr. Amara Singh is a materials physicist at University College London. Her specialty is quantum resonance imaging, a technology so new it barely exists outside research laboratories. In early 2026, her team secured permission from the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities to perform a non-invasive scan of the tomb's primary burial chamber walls. Officially, it was a documentation project. They wanted to build a molecular baseline for the preservation of the pigments. They weren't expecting to find anything Whitmore's team had missed. The scan took place after the excavation site was cleared for the night. Dr. Singh later described the setup to colleagues. The scanner hummed. The ancient walls stood motionless under the beam. Data streamed onto laptops in real time. For hours, everything confirmed what they already knew. Then the scanner reached the north wall, the wall directly facing where the coffin should have been. Specifically, it focused on the cartouche, the oval containing the name of the pharaoh this tomb was built for. Dr. Yusuf El-Rashid, an Egyptologist from Luxor University who was present that night, said the room went completely silent. On the screen, beneath the painted hieroglyphs, the quantum resonance imager was showing something else, a pattern of molecular displacement in the limestone that shouldn't exist, evidence that the stone in that exact spot had been carved, chemically treated, replastered, and recarved in ways found nowhere else on the wall. Dr. Singh asked the technician to run the scan again. Same result. She asked him to recalibrate. Same result. Dr. Priya Nair, a geochemist from the University of Edinburgh joining the team remotely, later said she couldn't process what she was seeing. The data was unambiguous. Someone had chiseled the original hieroglyphs into oblivion and carved new ones over them. But that wasn't the most disturbing finding. Not even close. The team ran a full structural analysis of the entire burial chamber. What they found dismantled decades of assumptions. First, the dark residue on the floor of the inner chamber. Earlier analysis had suggested it was degraded organic material, possibly the remnants of ancient floodwater damage. The quantum scan told a different story. The molecular signature matched a specific compound, natron salts, and aromatic resins, the exact materials used in the mummification process. Someone hadn't just removed the body from this tomb. They had rewrapped it here, in this room, and then taken it somewhere else. Second, the walls. The quantum imager detected what Dr. Singh called inscription ghosting across 4 separate panels. This is a molecular signature. It means the limestone along those sections had been worked twice, carved once at depth, chemically smoothed, then replastered and recarved at the surface. The ancient craftsmen hadn't simply plastered over the truth. They had tried to chemically erase it first. The plaster was a second layer of insurance. The original carvings were gone, but the memory of them remained in the stone itself. The microscopic trauma of the first chisel blows, still detectable 3,500 years later. The room was silent for a long time. Dr. Al-Rashid was the first to speak. He asked if the scanner could reconstruct what had been erased. Dr. Singh said yes. By mapping the quantum displacement signatures, the ghost impressions of the original inscriptions, the computer could digitally rebuild what had once been carved there. She initiated the reconstruction program. It took 17 minutes. Slowly, the original hieroglyphs materialized on screen, symbol by symbol, rising like shadows out of the data. Dr. Nair, watching from Edinburgh, later said nobody breathed. The names emerged one at a time. They were not the names of Thutmose II. In 2 of the 4 panels, the original text referred to a female ruler. The epithets were those used exclusively for a reigning pharaoh, not a queen consort, not a regent, a pharaoh. And the cartouche that had been chiseled off and replastered over was not Thutmose II's birth name. It was a throne name, not Takher, the throne name of Hatshepsut. The quantum scan told the whole story. This tomb was not built for Thutmose II. It was built, or at least partially prepared, for Hatshepsut herself, possibly as an early tomb before she commissioned the grand burial complex at Dar el-Bahari. When Thutmose II died, whether from natural illness or something more sinister, Hatshepsut faced a crisis. She needed to bury a pharaoh. She needed to do it in 70 days. And she needed to do it without drawing attention to the fact that her own power was built on foundations that might not survive scrutiny. So her priests went to work. They stripped the tomb of its original royal identity. They plastered over her name. They recarved the walls with Thutmose II's. They placed his grave goods, hurriedly, imperfectly, inside. They sealed it, and then, quietly, they moved his body somewhere else. A second tomb, hidden, undisturbed. A place only Hatshepsut's inner circle knew about. Somewhere in the rubble-choked cliffs above the Valley of the Kings, sealed beneath 3,000 years of rockfall and silence. The mummification residue on the floor confirmed the body had been here briefly, wrapped, prepared, and then removed. The tomb was a decoy, a performance for history, a sealed lie. And then, when Hatshepsut died and the backlash began, when Thutmose III ordered her monuments destroyed and her name erased, the priests who knew the truth were already gone. The second tomb's location died with them. The tomb near Luxor now sits behind locked gates. Millions of people will one day visit it, believing they are standing where Thutmose II rested. But beneath those painted walls lies the ghost of a different story. A throne seized, a husband possibly betrayed, a body hidden, all of it inscribed in atoms and echoes, invisible for 3,500 years. Exposed by a technology that reads the memory of stone. The findings haven't been officially published yet. Verification is ongoing. Careers hang in the balance, but the data is out there now, and it raises questions that won't go away. If this tomb was a cover-up, what does it mean for the mummy found in the 1801 royal cache? The one labeled Thutmose II, ravaged and disease-ridden. Was it really him? Or was it someone else, given his wrappings when his true tomb needed to stay hidden? How many other 18th Dynasty tombs were repurposed the same way? Their original occupants quietly relocated while history watched a carefully staged performance. And the biggest question of all, where is the real tomb of Thutmose II? The undisturbed one with the untouched burial, the original artifacts, the body that was carried out of this chamber in the dead of night? Because somewhere in those cliffs, above Luxor, beneath the rubble and the centuries, a pharaoh is still waiting to be found. Tell us what you think in the comments below. Is this a deliberate royal cover-up, or is there another explanation? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more secrets they don't want you to know.